To open?
Do we have a motion to open the meeting?
I make a motion to open the meeting.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we also have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Well, I second the motion. They were done so fine. The same person should keep doing them every meeting.
No.
Nice try.
That's not going to happen.
And all those in favor for the March 17th interim meetings being approved?
I'm in favor.
Aye. So, John and Bill, were you guys on the work session call?
I was
Wait, Charles,
I was not on.
Charles, before you go there, who's taking the minutes tonight?
Well, who hasn't taken them? I don't think John has,
Or Bill?
or Bill.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit afraid I couldn't do a decent job of it.
I
Whoever takes the minutes does a great job, but I really don't want to volunteer for that.
I'm not volunteering to do it, Charles, because I've been really out of the loop and feel it would be a handicap.
It doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, it can be bullets. It doesn't have to be a verbatim recap. And obviously, some folks who have taken the minutes do an incredible job. It can just be highlights. You guys aren't comfortable with that, John or Bill?
I'm
I'm going to pass.
I didn't hear what I must have, maybe it's me. I didn't hear what the response was.
I said that I was going to pass on this. Perhaps I'm not getting through. I'm not on mute.
Was that Bill? You broke up a little bit. That's Bill?
Yes.
Let's go. I'll do them. Hello?
All right, so Glenn, you're
I'm volunteering.
okay.
Thanks,
Then
Glenn.
we'll cycle around.
Thanks, Glenn.
Okay.
I'll do it next time.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ellen.
Ellen. So I just wanted to start by seeing if John and Bill happen to be on the work session Zoom earlier this evening.
I was not.
I was not either. 5 o'clock is tough.
It is. So the call centered around the capital budget. We did present our recommendations on the operating budget. My understanding is that there will be a subsequent meeting of the Board of Trustees as a work session and that would probably be their last or second to last, and that we most likely will not be participating in those meetings. So we made the recommendations on the operating budget. And I think a lot of the discussion tonight will probably center around some of the takeaways from that meeting, but I just wanted to give you guys the broad recap. We do have some background noise. I don't know if anybody is driving or.
Maybe
I'm not hearing any.
maybe if we're not speaking, we should mute ourselves.
We could do that.
Glenn, I think it's coming from you.
I have no sound in my house at all.
Okay, we'll just,
Is that a fan? It might be the fan.
there it is. Whatever it is, just stop.
Good job.
Glenn, I think it was you. I can't see you, but I do see the fan. Maybe it's the fan.
Was it the stand?
It was the
Maybe.
stand. Now it's back.
Okay, it's the stand. I'll have to mute until I speak.
There you go. That's great.
So my one thought after the meeting today is I think we need to rewrite our recommendations. So thank you, Len and Charles, for putting that together. I think we need to be very focused on what the expense reduction should be. But I also think we need to focus on the priorities of capital planning, even though that was discussed during the meeting. But it's all over the map. And we have to look at what that overall debt service will do to the operating plan. I don't know.
I tried to recap. It would have, I thought, been helpful if the conversation had started with talking about process and, where these numbers in terms of priorities in the column on the screen, how they were arrived at, the disconnect between those and the framework that we had included in our recommendations. And hopefully, albeit, we have been talking about this for the better part of a year, and to not repeat what we've seen in the past. And this appeared to be very much a repeat of the issues that we took with this in the past. So now, with very little time, the hope would be to take those 1 through 5s, and just to recap what I was saying, to put that in a column and sort it. But with that, you need what Ellen was just alluding to as part of the conversation, and you need the 5-year plan in play for things like the Army Corps project, because you can't leave that $8 million in a column that essentially has an $8 million cap in play.
Right, but so if we look at our capital plan recommendations, the board officially has never approved them or adopted them. So I was very happy to hear that Victor keeps referencing them. But we need to make sure the rest of the board's on board with what we've recommended.
And that it's in front of them. Dan, I know, Dan, you've really advocated to get these formally approved, and my understanding is that that hasn't happened. At the very least, if we, it'll be the 3rd time, but if we redistribute them, if that's helpful. But to Ellen's point,
Charles, if I can, I think what you should do is send an additional email to the board. It doesn't have to be tomorrow, but it can be done before Monday of next week, asking for this to be put on the work session to be formally adopted. Or modified or changed, however the board wishes to handle it.
Good idea.
okay, we'll do.
And I will put it on the work session, and we will get to it in about a month.
If we're lucky.
It's better than what I've been telling people, 6 months. We've had stuff on the work session for well over 6 months. So you may want to make recommendations regarding the water fund, the sewer fund, and the operating and capital budget, or none of the above, or some of the above, or none of, or however you wish to do it.
But, so we've got two of the big elephants in the room are the operating and capital budget, setting the water and sewer aside for the moment.
Okay,
If on the, I think having the principles and the criteria are good to share with the trustees and ask them to adopt it. But I'd like to add to that, because my guess is, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the trustees will say, this is nice, but we've got to adopt a capital budget. And we have these numbers in front of us. And in the discussion that we had, which I quite frankly thought was quite a good one, I mean, the discussion among the trustees, because we did hear the key points about priorities, that was discussed at length. The how we're going to pay for it question, I called the cost, and at least I raised the execution point. What can we actually get done? Do we have confidence that this is realistic? We're not going to spend $8 million on the Army Corps project. My guess is we won't spend the $5 million on the $6 million in total on the sewer projects.
it's actually 10 million.
Yes, I'm just talking about 21, 22.
Yeah, you will spend, if you are lucky, if you're lucky, you will spend $3 to $3.5 million
In total, are you saying?
for the next of the 5 million.
Oh, that much. Okay. Well, that's more than I would have guessed, but okay.
Well, what you aren't aware of is there is a time limit due to a save the sound legal action in trying to get that modified. So we have to move full steam ahead. Whether it will or not, I can't tell you. Getting a straight answer is very difficult because we're not sure who's running the show at the moment. Jerry's out. Jerry has his approach. Dan has his approach. The trustees have their approach, but the way it was left was Jerry was going to be the project manager. Now, if Jerry's not up to that, we have Kellogg, which is an engineering firm that will be doing project management work. We've talked about hiring a project manager. We're in limbo at the moment. But the elephant in the room on that is that if we don't move forward, there is massive fines that we will be subject to.
Okay.
Right, but at least the positive stuff I heard from the meeting earlier was the other trustees were interested in the priorities. And
I think everybody's interested in the priorities that was at this meeting.
right, but not necessarily interested in spending money on a pickleboard court. That's not a priority. So I think, Dan, and thank you to you for raising that during the meeting of where are we spending money versus, what's mandated, safety, blah, 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 versus nice to have. And there's a lot of nice to have in the current budget.
The problem, Ellen, is because they've pushed everything into the capital budget, you get to spending $2 million in 5 minutes. We have paving projects that run annually $911,000. We have a crane that needs to be fixed down at the harbor that we had to rent the crane this weekend in order to do work down there that shows $500,000. We are under New York State mandate to fix Hunter parking lot for $287,000.
Right, but Glenn, that's all fine. That doesn't mean we need to upgrade the spray ground.
No,
And-
that should
and
actually
build
be
pickleball
covered. We have
courts.
$400,000 in money for under recreation. Let the recreation committee figure out their priorities of how they want to spend that money.
Well, in the time frame that we have to get this done, my suggestion might be to say prioritize it and do, and see what you can get done in 1 and 2. And to the extent that you can put anything else in that staff believes is necessary, you can go with that. And that puts that into a perspective, and that's where Kelly was actually going. Without realizing it, she wanted to know what, how much all of number 1 was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thing. So I think it helps sets the stage, because otherwise I don't think we can get into going through the list of the 3 pages of stuff and trying to do it for them. I tried to get that done, but saying we would, that you would be happy to help, and that didn't fly. So it's called pride of authorship and who's in control. So they want to be in control, let them see what they come up with, but I would suggest that that's what you might want to do so that you can move forward. For instance, if it were me, I would say we should be doing priorities number 1, according to the list, priorities number 2, priorities that are cost effective or are funded by other things. For instance, municipality, whatever it is, the new software program for $75,000 will save hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of time that are spent on foils, because it all be online like it is in most every other community. But in this community, we hide everything, and nobody can find it, and you spend hundreds of hours on it, and that takes away from other things, and then they ask for more staff. So that would be a substantive thing, something that's funded by the other funds that are available. You can throw in. And that type of thing is or whatever else you want to come up with would be meaningful and easy to implement in, within an hour meeting.
But the other thing also, and I remember this from when Jerry first came on board and we were first meeting with him, he was saying you can have whatever capital budget you want. If the village can't support the work, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's really what that threshold is that needs to go forward.
I understand that. So you can say it any way you want, but I would suggest that you may want to do that because unfortunately we're in a quick and easy approach or no approach. We're going to have one more meeting of the board before we meet in public session to go over the budget. And even at that, they're not going to have it. They've already crowded that meeting with 3 other things. So if we get to spend an hour and a half on it, it will be amazing.
And just to clarify, obviously the prioritization is a priority. And can you guys see my screen with our framework up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these 5, I believe, were pulled from a state document that listed these, I believe. In looking
Well,
in the budget, in looking in the budget, there's a different order of priority that they've listed. They have consent decrees first, health and safety, then vehicle and equipment, operational impact, BOT initiative, and then maintains and improves quality, and that covers. So there's a disconnect between their, on page 108, this little table,
Yeah,
versus ours. So that may be something to consider, given where we located this. Are they using the, correct criteria through state guidelines?
Well, hopefully Dan got that message today. But I don't know. You're not gonna know till you get whatever you get back.
The other thing you have to remember when you do those priority lists, it's each department is doing their own priority list, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
well, that's what I mentioned. And because now Dan Sarnoff has the responsibility of saying, what's the overall priority list?
Right. He should be taking the top 2 from each department and then coming up with an overall list.
Yeah,
I
but I
don't
think,
know.
I think,
No, no,
I
no,
think,
no, no.
I think what we're saying is that if, let's just say points 1 and 2, I think that's what Dan Natchez said.
Yes.
If you look at health and safety and you look at consent decrees or requirements, just those 2. If those are the 2 top things, I think they're in reverse order in the village statement. But if you take those 2, and if you answer the question, which projects fall into those categories, like the sewer projects, as Dan said, we're under some form of a legal obligation. Are there any others that were under a legal obligation? And what are
Right.
The
Yeah,
answer is you have the sewers, you have the Hunter parking lot, and you have the Westchester Joint Waterworks dam.
Right, so the one thing I want to add, so Dan Sarnoff seemed to have followed the format I pulled together last year, and I'm not complaining about that. But the priority numbers were from each department head and what they each thought was the most important to them. And of course, they all ranked everything as 1 or 2. It did not follow our guidelines from a regulatory mandated blah, 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 blah. So I think that whole priority column at this point is somewhat meaningless.
Well, it helps understand what's important to the individual department, but really that's as
Yes,
far as it goes. If we're going to follow the criteria there, someone, presumably Dan Sarnoff, would have to say, here's the list of things that are legal and consent decree. Here's the health and safety items.
Yep.
So someone has to make that judgment.
right, but I just think there needs to be a different priority column other than what's there now.
Yes, that's definitely true.
Yep,
What 1 through 5, according to probably the criteria that we outlined. And then where I was going was you would effectively then sort them. And if the objective is to stay within the 7.5% debt service, you back into that math and you draw the line at a dollar amount, which we had come up with around 8 million on the higher end. Everything below that effectively, unless you're willing to exceed the 7.5, would have to wait.
That's right.
yep.
And that
And
can get
clearly-
difficult.
That makes it easier for the board to say no to projects or, that not this year, maybe next year.
And the Army Corps project, I can't see it being approved that quickly. I appreciate it's a different administration, but if the numbers don't pan out, the numbers don't pan out.
Yeah, I mean, and if you realistically were going to go 5 and 5 on this sanitary sewer line item, and then a component of the Army Corps, you're potentially at that 8 million across the two line items. So can we just revisit what the mechanics are? Because then this relates back to the debt service, which impacts the operating budget. If you're above that 7.5, you just have to factor that in. I mean, is there a legal cap to the debt service?
No.
No.
In which case, then that's a decision-making process that relates back to, budgeting for that. And there's an interplay.
And Charles, remember, I know you keep talking about the 7.5, but all debt isn't the same. The sewer debt is going to end up being paid by the sewer rates. The water is going to end up being paid by the water. Right now, what we owe is we owe $24 million in our general fund. We have $1.74 million coming off that we've paid in principal in this upcoming year. So you got $1.7 million is simply replacement of new debt for old debt, and then you're adding new debt to the budget. So if you wanted to spend $5 million, you'd be spending $3.3 million more than debt that we retired this year.
Right.
And
Yeah,
the bonding would be in 2 years.
Yeah, but Glenn, the bottom line is, from a taxpayer perspective, I have to pay all of it. I don't give a crap what fund it's coming out of. My net costs are going up. So we can't look at it individually. We have to look at it in totality.
Do we know what the budgeted debt service percent is, and what the capital budget, what that could accommodate in terms of a total budget for the year? Not the 19 million, presumably.
No, that's something we'd have to figure out. Like I said, the general funds, we owe $24 million right now. And we pay, it's over 15 years, I think we owe, and we took $1.7 million off of, $4 million off of our debt this year. That's all in the, tentative budget book that you have. If you go to the later pages, it has laid out the library fund, which is a wash. The library gives us the money, we pay the library. The water fund, we're reimbursed inter-fund transfer, and the sewer fund's the same way. The principal on everything outside of those three items, we owe $24 million, and we paid $1.7 million this year.
Yeah, but here's the point. Those numbers don't tie into the debt service number in the budget.
Yep.
Well, so just let me finish. To get back to Charles' question, in the tentative budget, the debt service number is 8.2% of the
Yes.
total tentative budget expenses. So, and it's gone up almost 15% year over year. So clearly our debt service is growing.
Yes, we spent $5.2 million in new debt on general funds last year by itself. And we took off a total of like $3.2 million. So our debt's going up, and our debt is going to be going up substantially next year, because we already have over, I think we have $7 million worth of projects that we have paid for, but have not yet either bonded or paid for out of the general, or taken the hit out of the general fund.
Okay, and what that argues,
and that's the number I asked Augie for tonight.
yeah,
We owe a bunch of money on water projects. We owe over $1 million on general projects. We owe water projects, and we owe sewer projects that are not yet bonded. We've paid for them, but we have not yet either bonded them or expensed them through what's the term? Unassigned funds.
well, what that argues for then is a multi-year look at the capital plan, which we've done, and then how it's funded. But right now, if you buy into the criteria, we're going over the 7.5% number, which is fine. But what it does is it crowds out other expenditures, presumably, and is part of the problem we're facing with respect to our total expenses. So therein lies.
Len, that concept is very easy for others on the board to understand.
Yeah.
They may accept it, they may reject it.
Well,
the
here's
figures
where your
and the
problem
logic.
is. We have exponentially expanded the amount of management in the village and the salaries of the village. We used to simply have a village manager. Now we have a village manager, an assistant, a secretary, and a second assistant. The rec department, 12 years ago, had 3 people and 1 part-timer. They now have 7, 8 people. We have an HR department that only started a year or 2 years ago. We got an IT department. You know, we have, you know, a lot of people that they have brought on and hired. And when you talk about the village manager, basically his salary has doubled over the last 10, 15 years. I think Lenny Verasso, when he left, was like at about 120. We moved it up to about 135 or something like that because we needed a true professional. And when we hired Schlesinger, then we hired Jerry, and he's had 2 major bumps in his first year. He's had 211,000. I think we brought him in at 180, 181 or something like that. So you have a substantial increase in the amount of workers who are in the office. Well, your argument could be that do we need an HR department? The argument could be, do we need that many people on the rec department? The staffing of the police department. But now you're getting into, you actually have to make physical cuts in departments in order to fund your capital expenditures. And is there anyone currently amongst the trustees who has wants to go that way? Because if the trustees aren't on board, that question's going to go nowhere. In the physical budget themselves, they virtually have taken everything out of the operating budget that has any substantial cost to it. There's if you add up all the supply lines together, they don't amount to a hill of beans. Everything is now done in the capital budget.
Well,
the other thing you can argue is, look, if you want, tell the budget heads, look, if you want this piece of equipment for $15,000, realign your budget and you pay for it.
Right, but if we look at some of the items that were presented today as the capital expenditures, I would never say a licensing fee for software is capital. That's the operating budget.
I absolutely agree with you, and there's a number of items in the budget, but this is one of the little tricks they use to stay under the 2%. That's like we're back to the $150,000 for police cars is back in the capital budget, yet we spend that $150,000 every single year.
Yeah, but that's okay. On that one, I disagree with you totally, Glenn, because I think I said this to Dan. When I worked for the New York City budget office, I was responsible for the NYPD budget. And we budgeted the RMPs in the capital budget all the time. And that's the way it should be done. That's the way it should be done.
You can put it in the capital budget, but then you have to have money from the unexpended funds to pay for some items in the capital budget. You can't bond every single one of these items in the capital budget. There's not enough money.
Well, what you do is when you take a car loan, it's a 5-year loan. That's effectively what the village is doing. because the cars have a useful life of at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, certainly from a technical point of view. But we probably should come to some agreement on how we want to approach the capital budget item, because talking about the operating budget may get a bit more complicated. So I'm not quite sure where we ended up on this capital budget. Is it just send the document to the trustees again? Or is it supplementing that with something specific
Well,
on what was presented today?
again, understand for the most part, whatever you're talking about in this year's budget, if it's spent next year, it won't be bonded until the following year. We currently have a number of items that we've paid for this year that will be bonded next year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
So
But-
that's the first number I wanted to get. But
except
comfortably,
Glenn,
you could
that's
probably
not always,
you could probably spend $4 million over the 1.5, which would be a quarter of a 1% increase against the operating budget. But I'm only talking about, the general fund. The water fund by itself is going to be astronomical. I don't know.
right, but Glenn, you can't always state that whatever we spend on the capital budget won't be bonded till the next year. Because there are bonds that are issued during the year.
Yeah.
So, Augie, and I'm not knocking him, he tracks this and then issues a bond. So it's not always a next year event. It can be a this year event.
Well, no. Augie's going to buy bonds this March. And then the first payment's going to be the following year. That's like the bonds that we bought this March. The first payment will be in this year's budget.
Except
we
he
always
also
do
did
annual
bonds,
principal and payments.
except this past year, he did bonds, I believe, in July. So you can always say it's not a current year event. And I'm not convinced that that our bonds are issued with payments at 12 months, not at 6 or 3 months. So we may have principal and interest payments during the current year.
The recommendation, what is the thought of what you think we have to spend on the capital budget, and then what would the priority projects be? Those would be the two questions.
So in addition to sending the document, I can, for the capital budget, summarize the bullets that we discussed. I can send that to the group, and we can see if we want that, which will be very succinct and targeted, kind of a recap of what was discussed amongst ourselves, as well as during the work session tonight, to accompany this document. And if you guys want to expand upon that with more specific, we can do that, but I'll quickly just recap the major bullets.
Well, that sounds like a reasonable suggestion, Charles.
Okay, I'll do that. Hopefully in the next 24 hours, and then we can weigh in on it and get that out like immediately, basically, with what's coming. There, Dan, you're reconvening. Is it the 26th is the deadline, but the 20th is the 20th?
We're reconvening on the 20th.
Okay, so that's a week from today.
Next Wednesday, right? No, next Tuesday, excuse me.
Okay, and with respect to the operating budget, is that, Dan, do you know if that's going to be revisited as well on the 20th?
It has to be.
Right.
They have a couple of items in there that have to be taken out. They still have the $234,000 for the concerts. The recommendation was to add $134,000 to fines and forfeitures and $100,000 to street parking. Now that we're getting meters on Boston Post Road, and Dan sent the rest. There was a recommendation to take money out of the sales tax, but they were also recommending borrowing up to $3.2 million out of the unassigned fund and actually having a lowering the taxes by about 4%. But that was all suggestions in a memo sent by, I believe, Jerry.
So given that their latest version of the operating budget may have changed, I don't know where that stands, I can, in addition to the capital budget, I verbally presented what we reviewed as a group, which Len had taken the lead on preparing. I can go into those bullets and extrapolate the conceptual points, maybe without the dollar amounts, but just to reiterate for the record what our recommendations are thematically. Do you guys think that any of the specific numbers, like the 297 to the 2, we could stick with? With respect to the unassigned fund balance, do we want to communicate those specific numbers, et cetera?
That's just a snapshot that changes all the time. If you wanted to put the unassigned fund in, you would have to do it as of May 31st of last year, because that's what that for budget purposes, that's normally what they do. Is that's when they do the snapshot of where our funds are.
Well, that's what was done in the numbers that Charles gave today.
Yes.
I think, Charles, the one thing that I would not include in what you say is about the police contract and the manager's raises. That is in the budget and likely, because Jerry, I know in the last time included, he sort of hid in the budget the CSEA increase. So I think we ought to be more targeted on the expense side. Talk about the village attorney as a key open issue, and the expense reductions that were included in Dan Sarnoff's department summary. I know Ellen had some, when she was going line by line, she said she found some small potatoes. I don't know, Ellen, if there's anything that you want to say from an expense point of view that could be taken out.
The only, there are lots of little bits. So if I looked at the current spending on utilities, electric, we were way under plan. And I don't know if that's just a question of timing and allocations. I think we could cut back on training, conferences, memberships and dues, but that's all, as you said, small potatoes. The one thing I think we can do is increase our reimbursement rate for police overtime. And I sent all of you an email on my analysis on that. But again, we're not talking huge amounts of money. You know, if we go up to the most I recommended, which I think was 145 an hour, we're going up 80, 90,000 a year. So again, not huge amounts, but it all adds up.
Dan, what do you think about yourself on the non-property tax revenue? I know that.
Sorry, what do I think about the which?
Well, let's say on the sales tax, because there's a big chunk in Dan Sarnoff's email taken out of the sales tax.
Okay, so Victor, one of the trustees, Victor for asked that 400 and, I don't remember what it is, 430,000 or 470.
466.
Okay, so 470,000.
Yeah.
I round everything off. Be removed from the, you know, that is where the staff is in a draft budget that I saw, a draft amendment for the budget that I saw today is going. So let me ramble for a minute. I spent the entire day playing with the budget figures, the information that you guys have developed and gals. I got clarification from Augie as to a lot of things that are in or not in the budget, et cetera. The two items that balance the budget are going, you know, the two big items that balance the budget are the sales tax and the and the reserves. So the more you lower the sales tax, the higher the taking out of the reserves are. I do not think there is sufficient support for taking $1.3 million from the reserves or whatever it was that Jerry recommended. I don't think there is enough support to get a reduction in the tax rate from last year. I don't see it. Might happen, but I doubt it. The legal issues, or the village attorney issues, as most people refer to it, is a big thing, with 2 very much against doing anything and 3 very much for doing it. And the only question is how they're going to do it, whether they do it in the budget as we adopt it, or we amend the budget after it's adopted. We're in interviews right now. And I don't know which way it will go.
Yeah, but Dan, if I can interrupt for a minute, I'm sorry. If we amend the budget after it's adopted, that's then eating into using money from the reserves. And that's already precarious, you know, from a balance perspective.
I understand that, but that's what we've done this year. We took about $1.5 million out of the reserves during the year.
Yep.
For, you know, FEMA and COVID and whatever. Now, we're going to get that money back.
Right.
And that's another thing that I think is very important that you need to weigh in on, is whether monies that we are getting back from COVID or FEMA or storm damage or whatever not be spent on, you know, operating items, because then all that does is put you in arrears for next year.
Yep.
But it can be spent for one-shot items, or put into the reserves, or put into or made to pay for things in the capital that otherwise couldn't be funded because it would exceed your 7.5%. So those are things to consider. My, my thought is that I would not talk about how much should come out of the reserves, but I think you might, in terms of a dollar figure. But I think you can, or how much should come out, or, how much should be reduced or not reduced from the sales tax. But I think to say those are the two critical items looked at, and both of them will determine, how the budget gets balanced. Those are your two big fungible items that you can, massage one way or the other. And I think
On the
that
sales tax,
again,
on the sales tax, I am very comfortable with what they originally proposed, because we're probably going to get somewhere around $3.8 million this year. And even if you have a 10% reduction, you're still in the $3.6 million range. So the sales tax I'm comfortable with. What I'm completely uncomfortable with is the rec department, but they're not going to change that. So as per Len's letter, I think, I hope that you got it, Charles. The only thing on the operating budget that I would add is that the second week in October, that the operating budget should be examined, both on the revenue and the expense side, because at that time, virtually every one of your summer programs is over. Whether it's the Daily Beach Pass, whether it's Harbor Island, whether it's the ramp, day camp, most of those programs are over. You can have 4 months of data on your sales tax. You'll know what your seasonal parking would be. You'll have 4 months of data on your street parking, and at the same time, you can start to look at your expenses and see, is overtime creeping up, where we are standing, where we can stand legally on certiorarities, where we stand on legal costs and such, and at that time make recommendations of, hey, everything's going great with the budget, there's not a problem, or these are areas that we're seeing shortfalls in. How are we going to make the adjustments 4 months, into the budget for the rest?
But Glenn, I mean, that's all well and good, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but the tax rate increase would have already been put in place, and that's what we're trying to deal with now.
Well, either the board is going to borrow against the unassigned funds deeper, or they're going to have the tax levy at some percentage around 2%. And I mean, you could recommend to the board that they should, come in at less than 2%, but understand, when you talk about the 2%, you're only talking about the sales, property tax portion of your bill, which is 2/3 of your bill. The rest of the bills still going to go up 11%. The fees and everything. Everybody's going to be paying more in fees and everything else around the village.
Right, except if I don't need to do those fees, it's not costing me anything. But what's important right now, I think, is the budget stands is the 2.97% increase. And the general public doesn't know anything about 2.97% being allowable. Everyone knows 2%. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what they know.
Well, if that's the comfort level of the committee, you can recommend that the property tax increase shouldn't be more than 2%. Period. And
Well,
then
that's what we did say.
Yep.
But it's a judgment call the trustees have to make because it's about $255,000. The difference, I think, was between 2 and the 2.97.
Yeah.
So if the trustees feel they need to go that extra bump in order to balance the budget and not have to take much more out of the reserves, especially if a village attorney is hired, then that's what should be done. Because quite frankly, the difference between 2 and 2.97% on any individual homeowner or business is really small potatoes. Now, of course, I know we're not talking about the education tax portion of the property tax bill, which is usually much larger. But the village portion, that's a small but symbolic difference.
Right, it's optics. It's really only optics. It's not the dollars.
Yeah.
But the dollars do make a major difference in terms of if you do the 2% as opposed to the 297 as your, whatnot to go over is you're going to be taking about another 250,000 out of the reserves. Which
Yep.
takes you over the $1 billion mark.
There's one other thing to keep in mind, and I mean, this comes to Ellen's point about when and where we're going to bond, is we have unassigned funds. Doesn't mean the unassigned funds haven't temporarily been spent on other items. Because we have items that we've paid for that we have not yet funded either through bonding, gotten grant money back from the state and village, or actually committed to pay out of our operating budget. And if all of a sudden you got between sewer projects and water projects $10 million worth of spending.
I understand that, but that's not going to change the operating budget.
Well, no, but what it might force Augie to do is if he doesn't have flexibility because we're taking money out of the unassigned funds, he may be forced to go to bond anticipation notes sooner than he would otherwise. I'm not saying, I'm just putting that out as a thought.
No, I understand that. I think the problem is, from my vantage point, looking at this from the vantage point of others on the board, is you're meandering and you need to simplify whatever it is that you want to communicate.
Yeah.
Because very candidly, we're going to have a maximum of 90 minutes for 5 people to make decisions. And if you think that's going to be easy, you're out of your gourd. John has his hand up.
Well, what's the sense of the board that
Glenn, John has his
Dan is going to present to the other trustees? What would we be comfortable with during his negotiation on the operating budget? Because it's going to be Dan versus the mayor, with 3 trustees making the decision in between.
John has his hand up. I don't know if that means he wants to say something or not. John?
No, I don't have my hand up.
Say again?
I don't have my hand up.
On your computer, you do. You've checked it, hand up, but that's okay. Not a problem.
Sorry.
Is it the board's preference that Dan looks to do 2%? Is it the board's preference that Dan says let's go up to the borderline at 2.97%? It's whatever our consensus is what we're going to tell him, and that's what he's going to try to do. Not necessarily going to be successful, but
let me offer a suggestion. Maybe Charles, if you want, or someone edit based upon conversations, the email that you sent around that basically you and I worked on. But also attach a table, and of course I'm a maniac about this, that has revenues and expenses, a simple table that's not like some of the tables we've seen, that and perhaps with some assumptions, let's say around the sales tax, so that we can share our recommendations with the trustees in a simple, concise way. And I think Dan is right on that. Now, the one point that at least I'm having a hard time with, Dan, is the whole village attorney numbers that Dan Sarnoff included in what he shared with the trustees. And it goes back to the point of the cost benefit analysis that Charles mentioned. If you want, I can give you some of the specific questions I have, but that from a financial point of view, really has to be clarified in my mind, because it's incomprehensible now from a financial point of view. And I could be specific if you like. Are you with me, Dan?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay, I stopped.
No. Sarnoff has put in 165,000 for the attorney. I do not believe that that's what you need to spend, but that is what is in there. The people we've interviewed have and are continuing to interview are all over the map. Some are much over that, but some of them are significantly under that. So, if you would ask me if I would have picked a number, I probably would have picked 145. They have $40,000 for a assistant. I think it's not 40,000, no, 50.
55 for the assistant, Dan.
Yeah, close to $60,000 for the assistant. And when we've talked to people, we found that a half-time person would be probably better. So you could take $20,000 off of that.
But the benefits rate is also crazy.
The benefits are in there, but that's the village's benefits are crazy.
No, but that didn't seem to align with what the rate was for the village.
I think this one
I understand that, but nitpicking is not going to get anywhere.
Yep, I appreciate
So,
that.
so the cost benefit, Len, is whether or not right now we have $110,000 for the village attorney plus. Okay, that's it. His retainer is $110,000, and he gets paid for everything other than the normal things, which is running something like 10 to 20,000 a month. So let's assume 10,000 a month. That's another $120,000. So if you combine the two, that's 265. 265, and even if the 10,000 is wrong, is high, which it's not, you're still way over the 165,000 or the cost of the attorney. What is more important is that the attorney can monitor what we're doing with outside attorneys, some of which are going to stay, and keep those costs in line and on a budget, which is not being done.
That's right. Okay, so now you're answering what I consider the key questions. First of all, the 110, is that what the village attorney is getting paid? You just said no.
No, the 110 is his retainer.
Okay, but
and then he gets paid additional things on additional litigation and other things.
Well,
That
hold
could
on,
be
hold on. Let's just go, I'm sorry, but let's just go item by item. 110 is the retainer.
Yes,
There's $25,000 for,
I think it's either 110 or 120. I can't
it's
remember.
110, it's 110. I'm looking at the budget now.
Yeah, okay.
It's 110. Then there's 25,000 for the village prosecutor. That's separate and apart, has nothing to do with this
That is
conversation.
correct.
Separate person, separate completely.
Okay, just let me go through.
Then you have the land
There's-
use.
There's 60,000 for the land use attorney.
Those are three, that's a different law firm now, separate.
Yes, okay. So the 60,
That has nothing to do with anything. That's a locked-in figure.
okay, that 60,000 is out from this discussion. Then we have the more important number, the 370 for litigation, okay? For litigation expenses. So now
Yes.
the first question is, if you hire a village attorney, does those litigation expenses, do they go down for one of two reasons? The village attorney manages counsel, as you said, and maybe for personnel actions and such things, the village attorney can actually take on some of that work that we now send out. So now we're getting to the cost benefit. So if the 370 can be reduced, all of the things equal, can be reduced as a result of the presence of a village attorney, that goes on the plus side of the ledger. Now, in the number that Dan presented, he had some number that comes from, I don't know where, 130,000 as a cost for the village attorney. So my question there is, what the hell is that? What's the 130,000 mean in that analysis? So the aggregate or the net cost to the village, I would argue, is higher than the logic that we've just discussed, if it at all holds any water.
Okay, so let me give you my read of that. Okay, I don't know what's in the 130 and nobody's been able to explain it to me. But it does not have anything to do with it. It's sort of like the land use attorney type thing. There was a budget that was created for some specific litigation that we asked for last week, and that's $130,000.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with hiring a village attorney.
I understand that, and it isn't the village attorney, it's the legal department. That's what's been thrown in. So you have 130,000 and 110,000. Well, no, just what you have the 130,000 in as additional outside costs that are anticipated to be incurred whether or not you change the full-time to part-time attorney.
Okay, so then the analysis for the village attorney is merely the cost of that attorney and the office assistant, the benefits, less the current expense for the current village attorney, both the retainer plus anything else that he receives. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but that amount is not on this. That amount is not on this spreadsheet. Now, I'm going a little further than what's in the spreadsheet because I'm trying to get at the cost benefit perspective, something that those who argue for a village attorney, or even if you want to look at it objectively, should want to see in order to help make that decision. So, and to determine the impact on the village budget. So we save the 110, we save some other amount off of that. We take out the 130, because it's not part of that analysis. And we don't count the 370 or the 60 or the 25 unless you think we can save money by managing attorneys and having the village attorney take some work that's sent out, brought in-house.
Well, I don't have the figures in front of me, and unfortunately, I just threw out the papers from Monday's meeting, and I don't know if it's online. So let me take a quickie look of the monthly bill from Spaldino. If you take the $10,000 out of that, what was paid for his monthly bill? So let me see if I can do that. Just hold on, Board of Trustees.
Sorry for being like a dog with a bone on this one, but
No. It's a reasonable approach.
it's such a hot topic, and as you've explained it, there's clearly a division in the board, and they should just know they should have an objective analysis of the situation.
Glenn, is the $130,000 what they figured to be the fringe benefits? In other
No,
words, the cost of
No.
retirement, everything of being
the
village employee?
$130,000
Based on,
Glenn, the $130,000 has to do with an additional budget for litigation that is ongoing for the next year.
No. I was talking about the proposed cost of the village attorney. Between the village attorney and the assistant, it was like $220,000, and then the fringe benefits would be about 60%, which would be another $130,000. Am I really off with that number?
I don't know. I can't do both things at one time. So either you know,
Come on, Dan, you can multitask.
I can multitask to a degree.
Yeah, well, one of the problems that you have with the type of litigation that you have, your Article 78 can be handled by your in-house attorney, but when you start to get land use, labor, tort,
All right, so quiet.
most of it's handled by
Quiet.
outside.
Quiet. Okay. We paid so just hold on for a minute. Add these up. 1,500. $300.
$300.
Just a minute. $1,500. 1,100. And 11,000.
15.4.
So that's what we paid of what we paid of the 51,000 that we paid our attorney. That is a minimum of what could be handled by the full-time attorney that would not have been incurred as additional expenses. We're paying him at a rate of $350 an hour.
But what I think, which we can't get our arms around, is what future legal events are going to occur that the village attorney will or will not be able to support. And that's an unknown.
It's an unknown.
Yeah.
All I can tell you is one of the people that we interviewed who brought the department from from a contract attorney to an in-house attorney. In 2 years, saved that community over $500,000.
Not insignificant.
Now, who knows what'll be here, but it seems to me that there is a high probability that can be meaningful. I don't know what we paid him last month, but every month there is additional work that they are paying. The labor council, his labor council bill is roughly $3,000 a month on a low, and it goes higher. So 3 times that is 36,000 just on labor disputes. So, I mean, these are, I don't know how that quantifies in your mind, Len, but these are things that, based on what we just did.
Well, I know one of the things I'm on the, for those of you who don't know, I know Dan knows this. I'm on an ad hoc committee to review the code of ethics for the village. And one of the things we're currently discussing is if an employee, a contractor, whoever has a question, do they go to the Board of Ethics or the village attorney? And we're split on the committee at the moment. But if we start, and I keep saying it's up to the Board of Trustees to determine what the role is of the village attorney, because do we want to be spending the money asking questions where their village attorney says their opinion's not binding?
But Ellen, of the amount of money that I just talked about, the $3,000 to $3,500 a month,
Yep,
has nothing to do with that. That is the manager and human resources asking the village attorney how to handle something.
right, but I'm saying the code of ethics could be throwing a whole lot more work towards the village attorney, whether it's outside counsel or internal. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
Sounds like a management issue.
Yep,
It's a
absolutely.
management issue. If
Yep.
the village attorney doesn't have the capacity to do something, he or she can't do it.
Yep.
And they
Or
have,
if it's not even their remit to do it. That's
Right.
more important to me.
yeah, you're exactly right.
Yep.
now, in addition to that, we have an outside labor council when things get heated or get esoteric. So, part of the issue, for justification is, play with those numbers if you want, see where you get.
But how would the outside labor council change? Because those are
It would
very,
go, it would go,
those
it would
are
be,
very specific
the outside council
negotiations.
labor would not change, but the figures I gave you are the in-house council labor.
You figure that the labor council in-house is about 36,000, and then you gave us another 14 foreign bills, so that's 50,400. My only problem is once you hire the village attorney, whatever rate you hire them at, they tend to get raises that start to kind of match everybody else's salary who are department heads.
Yeah, but isn't that arbitrary?
Oh, absolutely. But village manager we can't keep this person without this. Arbitrary is you hired a village manager and he's making $30,000 more 2 years after you hired him.
Right, but that was part of his hiring contract.
Yeah.
Well, does hourly rates for outside counsel go up?
Yes.
Okay, so,
But we both know the benefits for our village employees go up faster.
yes, they do
And they
go
will
up.
be village employees and they
Yeah.
will be getting.
But
I mean,
anyway,
whether they want to hire or not, to me, the question is how are you going to pay for it?
right.
And
So,
right now, what they're looking to do is, well, we're going to, again, go deeper into deficit, and we're going to postpone hiring 4 positions for 6 months, which means next year, those positions are back,
mhm.
you know? So, you know, again, how do you absorb this cost?
That's right. It's a problem. We're kicking the can down the road. There's no doubt.
Yes.
Right, but coming from the corporate sector, anytime there's, we had a bad quarter, and financial services was clearly a knee-jerk reaction quarter by quarter. We did a salary freeze. Then a hiring freeze, and then we went into cuts. I don't know why we can't do a salary freeze for non-contracted employees, and I don't know why we can't do a hiring freeze.
Oh, you're right, but that comes down to, again, the trustees. Whether the senior staff gets a raise or not is going to be the decision of at least 3 out of 5 of the trustees. Now, I'll
Right,
tell
but
you right.
except Glenn, we're coming from a perspective of what do we as the budget committee want to recommend. It's not based on what we think the board of trustees will do or don't do. What do we want to recommend? And if we go back to the email that Charles sent out yesterday, with Len's recommendations, it was in part doing a 6-month freeze on hiring.
I cannot disagree with you on that. I think there should be a hiring freeze, and quite frankly, there's some departments that should be looked at. Can we have long-term cost savings? I mean, the largest department we have is the police department. I think it's like 38% of the budget. We had 10 officers, 1 went back. We got 9 officers out on disability right now. We just hired another officer. At this point, we probably have 3 officers who are looking to get full-time disability and retire. Do we need to replace those 3 officers and have savings there? And if somebody leaves, which departments can we afford to have somebody leave and not replace them?
Right, but I don't know what any of the union regulations are in terms of number of positions. How easy
I don't
that might
think-
be to say.
That's
Go
a
ahead,
man-
Glenn.
That's a management issue. There's no union arrangement I'm aware of that requires, as much as like the nurses have tried, that require a certain staffing level.
Okay.
But I mean, we've
Yeah,
got
our staffing level was actually done by by recommendation of a committee that was made up, I think, of retired police officers, like in the year 2000, that said the perfect staffing for the Village of Mamaroneck is 52, and that's basically how they came up with where the staffing is now.
Oh, that
But
sounds
understand, right now we have nine police officers out on disability, and we're still staffing the police department between overtime and
Yeah, it's
There's
overtime.
people working during a shift. So, I mean, you know, I could argue either side. Either bite the bullet, raise taxes, go into the unassigned fund, or cut the budget. There's no other choices.
That's right.
You know,
But
I wish there's no magic tree in the backyard where I can, you know, go pick money. There's only those choices. Which way you want to go?
well, Dan, the board is not likely to accept recommending cutting the police department, is my guess. Reducing unless,
You can't, the issue with the police department, as long as you have people out on disability, you can't cut their
yeah.
positions. You still have to fund those positions until such time as they retire or go back to work or whatever. You know,
And
so-
that was my suggestion is
so
if
you
they
can't-
go
so-
out, if they go from disability to retired on disability, you don't necessarily have to go hire another police officer to fill that position.
Well, that's a whole different thing, which comes up with the recommendation that there probably should be a hiring freeze, you know, for all positions.
Yeah.
After the
Because
budget.
in a
for the
normal
first
year,
six-
you're always going
for
to
the
have
first
a
6
couple
months.
police officers retiring. They're 20 years and out.
Yeah.
And you got 40 patrol officers. So in any given year, you're going to have 1 to 3 officers. And we know that 3 police officers out on disability right now have put in the papers to try to get complete disability and retire on disability.
I
If
understand.
all
that.
3 of them win the cases, then and you don't replace those 3 officers, then you save 3 salaries. That would be a
Okay,
hiring.
You're not going to not replace them unless you have a hiring freeze.
That's what I just said. But it's got to be a hard hiring freeze. What they do in the what they have done in the past is that we're going to have a hiring freeze, except for health and safety,
Right.
which means we hire the police officers.
That's right.
All right. So I still think you guys and gal have to come up with whatever you want to come up with.
All right, so
Um,
I'm gonna,
If you think, you know, Len, if you think you can come up with an approach to justify the attorney, you do so. If you think you can't, then you do so. Simply saying it has to be examined as, you know, let's create another committee. You know, that doesn't cut it at this point. We have 7 days from now to when the board is going to meet and they're going to make the decisions. They're not going to have 2 hours or 3 hours to discuss this. It's going to be at the end of a very long meeting that is going to go into other things. And, you know, if you get 90 minutes, you're lucky. So if you want to be considered, I think you need to have a concise thing. I'm not sure that I would mention, you know, get into the actual numbers as opposed to the approach.
all right, so I'll, in addition to first sharing with the group the latest capital budget framework and a summary of the bullets for the next week to go into the meeting with, which is, I guess, going to be guidance for Dan with what he's going to be preparing. So I'm going to look to draft that tomorrow for you guys to look at, and then get that out. So, you know, clear recapping what we discussed tonight and what was discussed during the workshop. And then I'll summarize, in addition to that, the key points off of the operating budget email that went out. Probably more topically, maybe a couple of examples with some numbers, but limited. And then to Len's point, I guess with the table, that could include some numbers as an example of the ins and outs. If you were to pull from the unassigned fund balance of X, kind of recapping in table form. I guess I have to see how that will look with the numbers that we do have. But it could be more of it, of an example of this was an example recently in play, kind of summarizing what you have to consider as your option. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, but here's my concern. I'm putting myself in the seat of Dan's colleagues. I'm at a long meeting, an hour and a half, and I have to either approve or not approve a budget in a few days, and we're going to just talk about it for 90 minutes, then I'm going to forget all about it. So my thinking is slightly different than Dan's, and perhaps yours, Charles, is conceptual gets you nowhere. Is that here are the numbers. Here is the budget that we recommend for the following reasons. And that can be summarized and, in I think an understandable way. So I think if you have let's say a set of bullets that are, if you think conceptual or with examples, that's fine. But I guess I'm hung up on saying a table. Here it is, folks. Here are the numbers. Here's the revenues and the expenses. And here's what it looks like. This is what we recommend. Now, the board members in that case, if what's our goal? Our goal is to be in a position to recommend a budget that's balanced and that's sensible in light of the constraints that we're facing right now. And I'd like, ideally, to get the hook that we've all been talking about for so long is you got to think longer term. You got to think beyond this first year. Like, all this about the capital and the debt service stuff is we've got to think beyond just saying, okay, we've done the budget for this year. Let's forget about everything and not worry about it until a year from now, we will face the same issues, only worse. So I think we have to try to break that cycle. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Right, but I think your proposal from yesterday of a 6-month hiring freeze made sense. So but again, tangible for this year, not good for next year, because then we have full year salaries. I don't know. I think the biggest issue we have is that our staff and benefits are the largest portion of our budget. And how do we control that going forward? And all the other expenses. And there's no way we really can control that.
Well, one thing we can recommend is that the employees are going to have to pay a larger portion of their health care, and that it doesn't disappear after 10 years. Because I believe the system we have now is new employees contribute to their health care for approximately 10 years, and then they get free health care for the rest of their career and into retirement.
Right, but that all has to do with union negotiations. We cannot control that.
We also have non-union senior staff members and they also are a large portion. And if can start there. It says, look, you got to contribute 10% of the healthcare costs. We cannot just continue to pay everybody's healthcare cost 100%.
It's either something like that or have fewer people. Or both, or both.
Well, that's a discussion the budget committee can have once the budget process is done. What can we do? I mean, if you really want to go radical, you can do a cost analysis of the salaries and the benefits that we're paying the rec department, harbor master and parks department. Are you better off privatizing the whole kit and caboodle? Because of cost factors. I mean, that's as radical, but
Right, but Glenn,
that's the only way you're going to see cost savings is to freeze positions, have less people doing more work, or having them contribute more to fringe benefits. Other than that, that we will never get to a balanced budget. We are going to do deficit spending this year, and understand a little history. One of the reasons that we haven't had this problem in the past is in 2014, we had a complete revalve in the town of Rye. So the Rye Neck section had a rather large increase in property tax, especially some of the houses down by the water that weren't revalved for 20, 30 years. Then we did the same thing in the village of Mamaroneck, and we had a large increase in the property tax. Then we took our assessor's office and all our home community services, Meals on Wheels, seniors, and such like that, and now the town of Mamaroneck handles that. So we took that out of the budget. We had that cost savings in 2014, 2015. Then we simply didn't do any paving or anything or any major expenses. Then we had a sales tax increase of 1%, that our sales tax numbers went up significantly over the last 2 years. And now we're right up against it again, where we, are right on the wall where we're deficit spending. In the past, yeah, they would say we're going to go $600,000 into the unassigned funds, but in the end, the budget was padded. They put in, revenues that they knew were on the low side. I could go through it and go, right, this is on the low side. And on the expense side, they would pad the expense side a lot, $4,000 for training this. Then at the end of the year, of course, they had money left over, and then they would take the unassigned leftover surplus funds, and some of what we now have in the capital budget, they would pay for. They would pay $600,000.
Yeah, but
don't
Glenn,
have that
at the
anymore.
end of the day, what we need to do now very quickly is come up with a recommendation in the next couple of days of what we would like the Board of Trustees to take a look at. What you're talking about is much more long-term. We need a lot more analysis. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but we can't do that in the next couple of days.
No, I would say you should start the year with a hiring freeze. You should analyze how our spending is going in October, and then the budget committee should be looking at long-term the cost savings to the village or better reimbursement, and how the capital budget should be handled. they're not going to completely redo the budget when they have the meeting. There's going to be a couple of adjustments, and they're passing what we all have in front of us.
I think the only impact we can have on the Board of Trustees, Dan, chime in if you disagree, with them passing what's in front of them is the recommendation of the hiring freeze for 6 months, which gets us from 2.97% to 2%. And I think from an optics perspective, which
That
is
doesn't
why
get you-
hang on, which is why the board might agree with that, is the general public knows about a 2% budget cap. They don't know 2.97%.
Is there a consensus that we should recommend a hiring freeze for the first 6 months of this budget period?
I say yes.
Charles?
Agreed.
Glenn?
Yes, that's what we said in that email.
Yeah.
Yep. John, do you agree?
Seems to make sense.
Bill, do you agree, Bill? You're on mute.
I have been limited in my entire participation in the process. And that's for my own personal reasons. However,
I would also recommend is any capital project that we can aggressively go out and get outside funding for can be part of our priority of projects. If there's some projects out there that can be funded 50%, 75% by outside sources, and also for the Rec and Parks Department, you have $400,000 already sitting in a fund that was collected, when the apartments were built, in a restricted fund. Give them an amount, whether it's 200,000, 300, 400,000, whatever amount you want to give out of that. Give that to the rec committee, and they can make the recommendations on how they would prioritize spending that, and let them spend that on capital projects.
I was saying that this committee has done really a tremendous job of analysis and given a lot of thought to both current and long-range problems. I think that it would be fine to recommend hiring freeze, but that doesn't really reflect the depth of the analysis that's been done, and is not fully expressive of the concerns that the committee has. An awful lot of work will have been done for a limited conclusion.
It's a good point, Bill. I mean, when we have the capital budget framework that would be distributed, we've had, effectively an operating budget framework that was, more specific to the current period. And we've talked about going forward that would be elaborated on into a more general framework like the capital budget framework. The email that just went out was more of a live synopsis of the decisions in front of the board with the budget as it stands. So certainly did not limit it to the hiring freeze, but to outline the key decisions that they have to make within the context of where they stand, I guess is what we're trying to arrive at. But I hear your point that, there's so much behind what has led up to where we are that we don't want to lose that in this either.
Your two big things that, control how you've balanced the budget is the sales tax and the reserves. Those are the only two items that are large and fungible. The more you reduce one, the more you take from the other, and vice versa.
The recommendation for a hiring freeze isn't even directly relevant to the budget. It's a matter of future management.
No, I think it's relevant to the current budget, but it's very much a one-shot, short-term solution. I think based on everything we've all been discussing, we need to do a whole lot of analysis and long-term planning that we're not going to get done in the next week.
No. That may be, but whether you have a hiring freeze or you do not have a hiring freeze, the budget is the same.
Yep. Well, no, it's not, the budget won't be the same. If they remove 6 months worth of the expense and benefits, the budget's lower. And, can get us to the 2% increase versus 2.97%. But I still think it's a one-shot deal, which may be what you're getting at. It's not a long-term solution. It solves an immediate need. And it's very much a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't solve our long-term issue, which is the village needs to do long-term planning. And what are we going to do going forward? Because if the majority of our expenses are staff and benefits, we need to figure the rest out. And, one of the things I said to Jerry when he first came on board is, and I don't mean to insult the younger folks on the call, is this village needs to figure out what we want the demographics to be, because if we're going to keep raising taxes and raising taxes and raising taxes, we're pushing out the seniors who may be on a fixed income. And we're changing the entire demographics of the village. And I think that's something we need to focus on. I'm off my soapbox.
But
Well, again, that goes back to the actual cost analysis of every program. And I know that the rec department turned around and they made the bold statement that, we're going to be revenue neutral in X amount of years. And then I went and looked at a couple of things and it kind of made me laugh, because now you have the spray ground that if you want to do the spray ground, it's $1.2 million. Well, that's basically what the beach brings in for 10 years.
Right, and what's the spray ground gonna add to the water costs for the village?
I think this discussion is very important and interesting and meaningful, but it's not going to solve the problem that's before the house. So
Yep.
I think Charles is looking for approaches to put into something to send around as recommendations.
Are you okay, Charles, right now? I'm not sure we're making much progress in the last few minutes of the conversation, all of, myself included. So
Try to summarize where we're at, and to your point, Len, there's going to be a limited window with big decisions that have to get made, and contextualizing beyond the theoretical with the specific examples in play. I mean, I can use what was distributed, because that's basically the latest information we have. And if anybody wants to weigh in on either revising some of those numbers contextually, or with any new information that's come through, we can adjust it. But in table format, as you mentioned, just to present cleanly what the current decisions are with respect to the numbers as well. I mean, I could take a shot at just summarizing that, and if we want to play with formats and then update the numbers themselves, we could do that over the next 2 days. Does that sound like or if anybody has numbers or a framework with a table that they want to propose, but I could take a shot at that and get that out, and then we can work off of that.
I think it's a good plan, but I also think one of the things we should recommend to the Board of Trustees, since we've referred to it in a number of documents, is the Budget Committee is here to help with multi-year planning. We believe that's critical, and we're here to help. Because I think a lot of the things we raised on this call had to do with future years and where we're landing.
And that might be a point that you look to make, is we're not simply looking at this year's budget. How over the course of the next 3 or 4 budget cycles are we able to bring this budget back into balance? Because right now, I see absolutely nothing out there that is going to make this budget any more balanced next year than it is this year.
Correct. And we can't keep relying on taking money from the reserve fund, because we're then not going to be in compliance with the fund balance policy.
If our recommendation is
Yeah, and I pulled up the document that we prepared literally almost a year ago to the day, and it's just very interesting how thematically, a lot of these points were very live a year ago. We did attempt to conclude with recommendations about looking ahead with long-term planning. I just wanted you guys to see that. It's very interesting to me what we were up against last year in a equally, if not more volatile environment, and kind of where we were at with what we're kind of talking about doing right now, which was like the live set of recommendations.
In reality, Charles, not a whole lot's changed.
No, it hasn't.
Whether it's COVID or no COVID, nothing's really changed.
Well, no, one thing has changed. You're not going to collect $600,000 over last year's sales tax, and you're not going to collect $350,000 more in mortgage tax, because they are both in the budget now.
No, but what I meant when I said nothing's changing, I meant an overall approach to how you look at the budget.
You're absolutely right. It says the expenses are going up faster than the revenue, and they've completely separated the operating budget from the capital budget, which makes no sense at all. So I believe you're absolutely right. Do the hiring freeze, and you have to come up with a comprehensive plan of how do we get back to a balanced budget. And we will be more than happy to help right after the budget process. You know, we don't need to wait until next year. We can start June, July, throw everything out there against the wall, and then see which direction they'd like us to take.
And Dan Natchez, I don't mean to put this in your lap, but I'm about to. I think one of the biggest ways you could possibly help us with the board is to get Jerry, Augie, whoever to accept our help. We're not here to fight them. We're here to support them. And, you know, early on when Jerry came in, you know, he was meeting with Len and me on the police overtime stuff. He was working with us and it was great. And all of a sudden that seemed to stop. So, you know, we're here to support the village and village staff. We're not here to fight anybody. So however you can position us, Dan, to help with that, that would be great.
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, excuse me, on this question of recommendations still, if we're going to recommend a hiring freeze, why not also recommend a reconsideration of the medical benefits that are provided? Our constituents are all familiar with the fact that in the commercial world, nobody gets 100% of their medical benefits paid for by their employer. And this is a cost that's just going to keep going higher and higher. And I think it's equally valid to the hiring freeze, perhaps even more so.
I agree.
Okay, I'll include that. And I think we all agree that similarly with what we did with the capital budget, that the broader operating budget framework of recommendations is something we want to work on in the upcoming year. And those type of recommendations can be further incorporated into that. But this can impact live decisions as well. So we'll go from there. I'm a little murky on how to structure, and I think it's something that Len asked for of Dan and Augie, and has been asking for, is that one-page consolidated snapshot of where we are. And, you know, I'll just play with that with very basic numbers that we had in the body of the email to get that in front of us, and then we can tweak it from there.
Charles, that was the table I was thinking about attaching to your narrative.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I was going to work on that. So you don't have to do everything. You don't have the time, I don't think.
I'll get behind you with that, Charles. I know it's been a long meeting. We've gone, you know, a lot of different directions, but I think at this point, that's the direction we should go in. And then, you know, once we get through the budget process, we can start to look at, you know, at the outside of the box type of things for the village.
And Charles, the other thing I would include in the recommendation is increasing the police reimbursement rate.
Yep, I've got that noted as well.
Yep.
Yep.
So that would help on the, you know, not a whole lot, but every little bit helps. So I sent that email out a couple of weeks ago on the analysis with different rate increases. So whichever number you feel is appropriate, that's fine. But, you know, we did say when we went up to 125 last year that it should be reviewed again in a year to see if that was appropriate. We also agreed that we would take a look at the $50 charge per project to see if that was appropriate. Maybe it's not with all of Con Ed stuff. And I'm not sure how they're billing all the Con Ed projects. You know, if it's one project at $50 or if it's multiple $50 projects. And we had excluded, which other communities did not exclude, the cost of police cars. And at the time, Augie came back to us saying that the cars that are used for these details are decommissioned police cars. So it's not a big deal, but I'm not sure that's the case today. And, you know, driving around town, I see all these cars, police cars, running using gas, lights on, blah, 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 but it's still cars from the police fleet. So we should probably revisit that as well.
Just, thanks, Ellen, and will do. And just one more question. With respect to the American Rescue Plan funding, it sounds like there's a very good likelihood that's coming, but they're not relying on that yet. Is that where that stands?
Yeah, it's going to come in two parts. We don't expect to get the first part probably until after June 1st, which means the second part will come in the following year. The other thing that we are anticipating is that we're going to be reimbursed for the storm in August, and then we're going to be reimbursed 100% for our pandemic control expenses.
So American Rescue Plan, FEMA, and then COVID relief, but none of which have they incorporated.
No, they can't anticipate the income on any of those. So that could either be done to pay for some of the capital projects or to take care of the deficit.
And Tom
But I
shared
do
what
think
the
American
number.
Rescue has some strings attached to how you got to spend it.
Do you recall what the numbers were, Tom? You're saying it's going to be in two components for the American Rescue, and Tom shared a number.
He said it could be up
I
to
think
a
it's like
million.
1.9 million or something.
No, he said up to $1 million.
Well, we know what the town of Rye and town of Mamaroneck are getting. I forget, it's a total of about 7 or 8 million for those two towns. And so they allocate to the village.
Based on some formula.
Yeah, I don't know the formula.
Yeah, I don't know either. But regardless of what it is, there were guidelines as to how that money could and couldn't be used. So if we wanted to take that money, however much it is, and put it into the reserve fund, I think we needed to be able to support that we spent money on ABC and we're just replenishing those funds. It's not as straight, here's $1 million, have a good time.
Right.
The other thing, and I announced it at the workshop, is New York State passed its budget, and there was a significant increase in the CHIPS program. We're going from 237,655 to 304,028. New York Pave, we're going from 54,247 to 81,364. And Extreme Winter Recovery is going from 43,000 to 66,000, which again is money that can offset some of the capital spending that we're spending on paving. And I know we are owed money from these three programs. I just don't know for how many years. And that's something I keep trying to pin down, and I kind of get, who shot John is the answer. We're owed money. I finally went, New York Dot published this This was passed by in the new New York State budget, and it has assigned what everybody's getting. So these are the numbers that we're going to be getting for paving projects this year, which comes up to about $440,000 that were reimbursed there. So the other question that I have is, how much do we currently have outstanding that we've paid for but we haven't bonded yet, and how much have we paid for and we're waiting for reimbursement from either state aid or grants? Because a lot of what we do now is you have to pay for it first, then you apply for the grant money, and then the grant money is given to you. That would be like we paid $250,000 for police cars and a bunch of fire equipment, and we're supposed to get reimbursed from the New York City Dorm Authority for a safety grant for $250,000. So we put that money out, that money spent. Now we're supposed to get that money back. How much are we owed in grant money that we haven't received yet that's going to go into the unassigned fund? And what projects do we have coming up? And what is I know on the sheet it has some of what we're getting in grant money. Which of these projects has the most bang for the buck that we can get money back from either the state or federal government?
Are we going to adjourn soon?
What's that?
Yeah, I think it's getting late. I still have a presentation to God help me, but in addition to ours, but yeah, so I'll run with what I talked about. And yeah, Len, if you don't mind taking a shot at the table, that'd be helpful. If you're all right with that.
Sure.
Okay, appreciate it. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll get the minutes probably in 2 weeks. I'm probably going to watch this tape, and that way I can be more accurate with the notes.
Wow. Well, that's a serious undertaking in itself.
Yeah.
I have to listen to me. That's punishment.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Did you get a motion to adjourn?
Did we get the motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All
Second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thanks,
your
everyone.
Take care, guys.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.